Hello and welcome to Rights Talk, a series where we talk about serious human rights violations with academicians, politicians, lawyers, and specialists. Today, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Emre Turkut. He is a research fellow at Ghent International Law Institute, and he wrote a recent report on impunity in Turkey for the Turkey Tribunal. Mr. Emre, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So today we are going to talk about impunity, since you wrote a recent report about that. Firstly, I would like to ask a brief question about impunity. So what is impunity?
Impunity in broad terms means being exempted from punishment. Let's say someone commits a crime, which is normally punishable, but he or she doesn't hold accountable for this wrongdoing or doesn't fear punishment. Then this means in practice that he or she does it with impunity. And in more specific terms, for example, in the context of international human rights law, impunity refers to the impossibility or the failure to bring perpetrators of human rights violations to justice and account. And when we say perpetrators, in an impunity context, the focus is usually on state agents, I mean police and military officers, and their accountability, like anyone else, may originate from different criminal, civil, administrative proceedings. And if these mechanisms do not work for them, then impunity occurs, and this basically constitutes a denial of victims' rights to justice and redress.
My second question is, what are the main factors ensuring impunity in Turkey?
Well, impunity may be caused by many systematic factors, and in fact, we discussed these factors in our comprehensive report that you just mentioned, and this was a report drafted for the Turkey Tribunal. And in that report, we indeed identify a number of factors that reinforce the patterns of impunity in Turkey. And one such factor is gaps in the Turkish legal structure. Currently, there are many impunity clauses under the Turkish law, which practically make the prosecution of state officials impossible. I mean, for example, police, the Turkish police cannot be prosecuted without the explicit permission of relevant administrative authorities. And in the vast majority of cases, such permission is not granted. And I can mention another legislation adopted in 2016, which provided a de facto impunity for Turkish military members for their operations in the Turkish southeast, and also a number of emergency decrees adopted after the 2016 attempted coup provided impunity clauses for civilians and state officials. So there is a clear lack of legal mechanisms in Turkey. And another factor is the lack of political will to hold state officials accountable. And in many cases, for example, occurred in the post-coup period, Turkish state authorities have failed to adequately investigate, prosecute, or punish perpetrators. For example, I can just mention a report by the Ankara Bar Association, which compiled a clear and convincing evidence of torture of purged diplomats in Ankara in 2019. But despite official complaints, the Turkish authorities did not take any meaningful steps to investigate these incidents. And the Ankara Chief Public Prosecutor Office eventually gave a non-prosecution decision in August 2020. Maybe the third factor could be the political rhetoric, especially in the aftermath of the attempted coup. A number of government officials in TV interviews have appeared to encourage torture and ill treatment for people who are allegedly affiliated with the Gülen movement. And such political rhetoric clearly contributes to the culture of impunity. Well, these are some of the main factors in Turkey, but we discuss many more of them in our report. So I really encourage anyone who's watching this video to go and check our report.
In these circumstances that you just mentioned, what do you suggest to the victims and their lawyers to fight this problem? Because there is a legal gap and there is the unwillingness of the politicians and authorities. What can they do in this circumstance?
I mean, great question. I mean, first of all, I would definitely encourage victims to be resolute and determined in their fight. I mean, there might, of course, be some repercussions and reprisals along the way, but and justice also might take some time. But they should not fear and go all the way to the end. And as for the lawyers, I would definitely suggest them to make use of all available legal mechanisms in domestic fora, as well as in international fora. I mean, they should not hesitate to make applications before international human rights bodies like the European Court of Human Rights or the United Nations treaty bodies. And they should definitely prepare solid applications, like good applications. And in order to do that, they should not hesitate to get legal assistance from international experts.
You mentioned the international bodies and communities. Do you think the international community could play a role in holding perpetrators accountable? I mean, if there is no application from Turkey, I mean, by observing, could they do something about it, or are they do they need to wait for somebody to apply to them before taking action?
I mean, first of all, I would say that there are like increasing efforts by the international community in this regard. For example, the European Union most recently adopted a new sanctions framework for human rights abusers. And this was largely modeled on the United States Magnitsky Act from 2012. And we also see some other countries like the United Kingdom, Canada adopting similar mechanisms. And another related development in this regard is the fact that universal jurisdiction for serious crimes is gaining more traction. So I mean, once these mechanisms start to fully function, human rights abusers, no matter which country they're from, no matter which nationality they hold, they will be facing serious repercussions for their actions. I think that this will be the role that could be played by the international community.
And I believe this will take some time because it's just establishing newly.
Exactly. This might take some time.
We won't need this kind of international action. We could hopefully in the future, Turkey could handle these things in itself internally before until it's too late.
There are many steps. There are many institutional steps that should be taken by the Turkish authorities. But given the fact that Turkey has not an independent and impartial judiciary, I don't think the Turkish domestic authorities would be. They don't think they would do this job. They would do a great job to fight impunity in Turkey. And again, this might take some time. But as regards the international community, there are some positive steps that have been taken in the last couple of years. And again, we as you said, we just have to wait and see.